welcome to this presentation on my research into student blogs, which I use for documenting the software development process. So the basic idea behind this was to try and encourage the students to re-engage with the process of documentation and design, looking at what students had been given. The quantity and the quality of what they had been producing had been incredibly poor. It began to deteriorate quite badly. Blogs seem to be a good idea here because they can write and reflect on what they've done. That students, when they do a programming course, think, well, that's great, I'm doing a programming course, why do I need all this documentation? And the problem that they have is that because everything is modularized now, my own feeling is that they seem to not realize that design and documentation go hand in hand with software development. They seem to think that, well, I learned that in another class, it doesn't apply here for this class in software development. That this idea of not really seeing the bigger picture, so to speak, essentially leaves them in a position where they can't quite understand and tie the two together, the idea of design and documentation and software development. And this is pretty poor for the students themselves, because good quality software requires good quality design and documentation. The rise of blogging, you can see it across a lot of disciplines. A lot of academics have used it in the past and are using it just now to enhance their teaching in some way, shape or form. So the thought was about getting the students themselves to use the blog. The idea was to get them to use the blog, and what they would do with this blog is essentially detail the software development process all the way through, from their designs and storyboards to problems that they came into with programming, anything that arose while they were developing their software. And this essentially would allow them to reflect on what they've done and how they've solved problems, and this helps really to make them active learners, because they're looking at, got an error here, how did I solve that error? It's there for them to reflect back on, and that, I think, is potentially good for them. The other thing about blogs is it's quite a media rich environment. It's quite a relaxed environment. So this idea of being able to communicate their design thought processes and include audio clips, video clips, pictures, images, screenshots, that idea essentially made the whole thought of using blogs the kind of thing that they would hopefully buy into and see how good that actually was to use. Because this project is for game programming students, then it also helps to showcase skills, and it gives them an online portfolio, which for games programming students is crucial. So the kind of pedagogical issues that we were trying to hit with this is blogging, as we've said, helps the student to reflect, but it also helps the student to engage in discussion, because they can comment on what their fellow students are doing. They can see how somebody else is tackling a problem, and it can give this idea of community, so that they're not the only ones suffering from these problems, or they can get help with whatever they're doing. Obviously you have to be very careful of plagiarism, but they can still talk to each other and discuss things, and this is very good for them. What did we do? Well, I primarily teach games programming, so I teach it to second year students and fourth year final students, and in the UK they are generally speaking, or in Scotland actually, they're generally speaking honours students at year 4. Second years, reasonably new, reasonably fresh. Fourth years, old hand. So we have two different groups, and this is quite interesting because we can look at how these groups not only fare by themselves, but you can then compare the data from the students that were in group 2 with how they perform when they move to year 4. So there's scope there for analysing the results and seeing what comes out of that. So 10% of the mark was awarded for their blog posts as part of their coursework, and it was essentially, wasn't quite compulsory, but because there obviously is a 10% mark for it, then in a sense it is compulsory for them to do. They were expected to do regular blog posts, and this idea of building up a reflective blog would help them trace the sort of development of their software and encourage this idea of active learning, reflection, looking back at what they've done, how they've done it, where they've went wrong, where they've succeeded, etc. Now the other side of that coin was that myself as the lecturer, I monitored their posts, so on a weekly basis I would review their posts and I would give them feedback. And the idea of me giving feedback, or the lecturer giving feedback, is again to help encourage, to try to get the students to engage with this idea of reflection, reflecting on what they've done, how they've solved problems, community, getting them to talk to each other, getting them to help each other. So the coursework that each group got was essentially very open. They had to design a game of their own choosing, and this open nature means that they're all coming at slightly different problems, but again, because it's not prescriptive, they have to think about what they're doing. They have to analyse, plan and design their games before typing in any code. So that's crucial, and because they have to analyse, plan and design, then that's what the blog was there for, to show how they had thought about the game that they were going to create, how they planned for it, how they designed it, the storyboards that they were going to use. And the whole idea is that they would do a lot of this work before they would actually start to code, and then of course they can use the blog to show how, as they were coding, the mistakes had crept into their code, how they'd solved that, where they had went to solve it. So again, it's building up a sort of database of resources. We wanted them to really basically apply the idea of think, then do, which would hopefully increase the productivity and reduce any sort of debugging of errors. The regular blog posts, date and time stamped, allows them to build a sort of reflective journal that they can look back, see, trace the development of their program, gives them an overview of the time and effort that they've had to expend in developing this software, and it also gives them a basis for material that they can use when they do the final write-up at the end. They also should hopefully see that the idea of software development is an iterative process, okay, and that iterative nature should be coming through in the blog, because they should be seeing in that how they've had to make a change again and again to solve problems. So what they started with in their first blog post and what they end up with as their game may not necessarily be the same. So far it's been running for 3 years. It's covered the academic years 2010, 2011, 2011, 2012 and 2012, 2013. We work a tri-semester system, but mainly teaching semesters A and B, so this has been used once a semester, A and B. So far the total number of students that I've run this with is 164, and it's now allowing me to look at how the students have performed in the Games Programming 1 module compared with their performance in the Games Programming 3 module, which is the last one that they do, and that gives us some interesting information. Now, what I've tried to do is, in the research into looking into this, is that there is a framework by Kerawalla and others that suggest that there are 4 main principles to the blogging for students, which is the audience, community, comments and presentation. So they have to think about who is their audience. In this case it's me, so it's a technical audience. Community, can they help each other? Are they willing to accept comments from their peers, or do they just simply want to have anything that they put up being locked by themselves? And presentation, how do they want to lay it out? It's a multimedia rich environment. Do they want to have pictures, videos, sound clips? What do they want in there? Some of the results that we've had so far, you can see there that it varies hugely. You can see how in this slide in particular that the final year group, the kind of core of the marks, is sitting much lower than the second year group. However, the second year group, you'll see also that it is skewed slightly by some students who didn't perform very well, but you can see that the number of posts here ranges from 0 to 16, which is quite amazing, but it does tend to fall with the sort of better students, round about the 9 posts for the second year students. For the final year students, much smaller, very disappointing, round about the sort of 4 to 6 mark for the number of postings, which is quite small really. You would have expected them to be better because they've had more experience of developing software, they've had more experience of basically writing, analysing, designing, using storyboards, all these kinds of techniques, agile methods, etc. But that doesn't seem to come through. You can see as well the frequency of posts per group and how it drops, and how it actually fits into kind of 2 distinct categories. For the final year students, there's a small number. Postings by the second year group are very positive. So again, we see that there's some sort of tail off between second year and fourth year. So in conclusion, year 2 students appear to outperform year 4 students. Generally we can see that the lower the number of posts, the lower the blog mark, the lower the overall mark for documentation, which is disappointing. Year 4 students seem to put in less effort. I'm not really sure why that is just yet. Again, probably after talking to students that become evident. Students appear to fall into 3 sort of groups: engaged and enthusiastic, minimal effort, and no effort at all. Sadly, there were some students that made no effort whatsoever. This ties in with other research that's been done and come to light as I've been researching this, which has identified that this minimal effort occurs quite readily in other areas as well. They see it as being doing as much as they need to get through what they need to get the marks, to get through the coursework. Some of the reasons that have come to light for the students' performance is that they were unsure of what was required. Fair enough, it was clearly stated to them, but again, some of them were saying they were unsure of what was required. Some mentioned that they had problems with the blogging tool that we were using. It was cumbersome, it wasn't easy to use, it didn't allow for the sort of same freedoms and artistic approach that something like Blogger or WordPress allowed. So again, that's something we can look at. And the quality of posts ranged from detailed to a single sentence. So thanks very much for listening.